Welcome into a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. We're here to break down UFC Edmonton, which goes down tomorrow on ESPN Plus, headlined by a key matchup in the flyweight division. We got two guys returning. Moreno, after taking a couple months off and kind of a kind of retirement in a way, now takes on Amir Albazi. Albazi stepped into the cage for the first time since 2023, has coming off some serious injuries. Of course, co-main event, key matchup in the women's flyweight division. You got Erin Blanchfield taking on Rose Namajunas. As always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, how's it going, man?
What is going on, Jason Floyd? The best in the business. Happy to be back. It's it's an okay card. We got some hometown fighters up in Canada. Interested to see who can pull it off in front of the hometown crowd, and maybe the pressure gets to some of these fighters. But all in all, there are some compelling matchups. I think it's a pretty decent card for it being not the most pumped card as far as upcoming events, but last week was okay. Man, Ilia Topuria really showed just timing's everything in this game, and I leaned that way. Luckily got it right, but all in all, last week was a pretty crazy fight card, and Khamzat Chimaev made me look pretty smart. Poor Robert Whittaker, and on the same night you had Robert Whittaker and Max Holloway walking away with defeats, and those are like two of everybody's favorite fighters. So it was a sad night for real hardcore fans.
Yeah, you talk about the fact the first time Max Holloway has been knocked out in his career. Of course, also you have Charles Magomedov with a spinning back fist knockout against Armen Petrosyan. And then pretty much I think you'd probably say, when we talk about fight of the year, Rebecca and Orbai going out there, and just a great matchup between those two guys. Hopefully you made some money there on DraftKings. Of course, we do have our DraftKings contest already up. That link is in the show notes. Whether you watch us here on YouTube or if it's after the fact, you listen to us on the podcast channel, that link there is in the show notes. So be sure to check out that. Of course, we got our Discord channel, totally free to join there. Also, we do have subscriptions available here on the YouTube channel, so we do appreciate that. Just to let everyone know, next week there may not be a show next week just because of my travel schedule, as I will be in Kansas City at the start of the week. I'll be in Miami at the end of the week, so just kind of depend on if we can get a show. If we do a show, likely to be on Friday of next week. But Pete, let's get right into UFC Edmonton. Of course, we've got to talk about game theory in terms of this one. And, as I look at the salaries in terms of this fight card, Pete, the thing that really sticks out to me is while we have 14 fights this week, we only have 3 fighters that are priced in the 9,000 range, that be Malott, Jasmine, and Zalal. And, you got 2 heavyweight fights that I think I'm going to target. There are some underdogs I'm going to target. And I will tell you this, even though I would say I do like the 9K favorites, I think the guy that I'm really circling as a high-end target this week may be Marc-Andre Barriault.
Yeah, I'm a big Marc-Andre Barriault guy this week. That high 8K range can sometimes be forgotten, but maybe not on a week like this when it's so condensed. It is kind of odd to see these salaries how they are. I mean, we do have 2 8,600 fighters, 2 8,500 fighters, 2 8,300 fighters, 2 7,900 fighters, 2 7,700 fighters, and 2 7,600 fighters. So it's like I can't necessarily remember a week like this other than when we had cancellations on an Apex card. But yeah, it's a little odd. It makes like Malott and Zalal very easy clicks. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you do like some dogs, it's not like you have to pay a 9,700, 9,500 price tag. Interested to see where you lie on some of these fights, but all in all, I mean, you got tons of potential. Like, I definitely see some fighters on this card that I do have with, like, I always had crazy aspirations for, and like circled them and said this kid has potential. Malott, Zalal, even Albazi, you know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of talent, throughout this entire card.
And I think you look at, 2 heavyweight matchups that I do have circled here, Romanov, Nascimento. Whose cardio do you trust more in terms of that matchup? I mean, unfortunately, that's probably a matchup that likely the winner is going to be in the optimal lineup, just because I think if it gets to, middle of the second round, one of those guys might just completely gas out there. Then you look at Lewis and Diniz, and Pete was kind of throwing, as we were talking pre-show about some things, of if Derrick Lewis is going to pull off a submission, this may be the fight that if he was going to pull it off. But to me, those are 2 fights that I'm targeting, and there is a underdog that I am targeting very early on in the fight card. So we'll talk about that as we get into it. Samuel, right now, I'm not sure about November 16th. I'm going to be able to make it up there or not. Just kind of depends on what kind of happens over next week. As literally, Pete, I'm only in town one day next week. So next week is a very crazy work week for me. Derrick, man, I appreciate you, as he says, making the students work independently so he can listen in. Appreciate it, Derrick. Appreciate it. So.
Damn. We appreciate all your love and support, guys. It's pretty cool. Jason and I enjoy doing this, and hope to continue to grow the channel with your help. If you can hit that like button, get us over 100 likes, and start helping us get to that 5,000 mark for the subscribers. That would really help the channel out a lot.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone that does tune in and all the people that have already signed up for subscription. We do appreciate that as well. But, Pete, let's get right into it. The main event is a matchup in the flyweight division. We got Brandon Moreno and Amir Albazi. Both of these guys returning. Of course, last time we saw Brandon Moreno was back in February. Of course, that was a split decision loss against Pantoja. He's actually lost back-to-back fights via split decision against Pantoja. Of course, Amir Albazi, first fight since June of last year. Of course, he's had those injuries where there was really a question mark of whether he would ever fight again. Of course, he is the betting underdog. This one plus 145, minus 175 for Moreno. Moreno, $8,500 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, where Albazi, $7,700 on DK, and $15 on FanDuel. Just kind of some of the things I wrote down about this matchup. Moreno, last time we saw Moreno get a win, you got to go back to January of 2023. Of course, that was a win against Figueiredo. Amir Albazi, if he did not have the injury situation last year, probably has already fought for the UFC flyweight title at this point. Of course, he is 5-0 in his career. And of course, mentioning about he's been out due to injuries here. When you look at the strikes land per minute, Moreno 3.87, Albazi 2.80. The takedowns average per 15 minutes of fighting pretty much almost exactly similar here. 1.74 for Moreno, and for Albazi, 1.71, Pete.
Yeah, I think this is a close fight. And I can't tell you that I am extremely confident one way or another. I do love the promise and the potential of Amir Albazi. I used to be a big Brandon Moreno backer from a betting standpoint and a DFS standpoint because of the volume. Lately, Brandon Moreno has not looked like himself at all. I mean, against Brandon Royval, I thought that was one of his worst performances. Just he's and it still was a split decision. That's my point. It's just like even when he does not look 100% or does not look like he's hungry in there, it was still a really close fight against Brandon Royval, who went up against the Tatsuya Taira a couple weeks ago and just completely put together a masterful performance. It's interesting, but you go back a fight prior to that. That's where he ended up losing the belt to Alexandre Pantoja. So, in one hand, like Brandon Moreno hasn't looked the best of late and hasn't looked necessarily hungry. Back-to-back split decisions. Is he still the same guy? Are we starting to see a little bit of deterioration to his game? Is he starting to plateau? What's the motivation like? Took some time off, reassess things. We'll have to see how he looks come Saturday night. Amir Albazi, on the other hand, I love what he's done in the UFC thus far. Picking up finishes over Alessandro Costa. I think that's probably his best win. Francisco Figueiredo, Malcolm Gordon, decision over Zhalgas Zhumagulov, and a split decision to Kai Kara-France that almost everybody picked Kai Kara-France to actually win that fight. But somehow he ended up, being awarded the decision there. That's the one red flag that I see is like, okay, Kai Kara-France landed 2 takedowns, which it was kind of a reversal of positions, and then one was a caught kick. But needless to say, Kai Kara-France landed on top. Amir Albazi's output wasn't all that great in that fight. From an effective standpoint, threw 173 total strikes, landed only 64, went 1 of 9 in the takedown department, still had 6 minutes of control time. So, like, he's implementing a good game plan of controlling his opponents, but sometimes it's to no avail in the takedown department. But I'm just interested here because I have red flags on both sides, right? Like Brandon Moreno's looked a little lethargic his past couple performances. We have Amir Albazi coming off a major neck or back surgery, one that kind of almost left him, like he almost didn't continue fighting because it was so bad, or it could have led to him never fighting or returning. we have seen certain fighters come back from major neck and back surgeries and look, kind of like career best. And the person that I can think of is Court McGee. Court McGee talked about his struggles from the neck and back, pain throughout his career, and then got it fixed. And look at Court McGee now in 2024. I mean, he's kind of making a resurgence. So I will say that in the lighter weight class, I feel like it's a lot more difficult to get away with losing a step. You know what I mean? Like, this is the most active weight class, from scrambles to volume to timing to precision. And I just think if like Amir Albazi took a fight before going up against Brandon Moreno in a 5-round bout in his return fight, I'd probably be a little bit more inclined to pick Amir Albazi here. With it being Amir's first fight back from that major surgery, and also just should have lost to Kai Kara-France in his previous 5-round bout. I'm gonna lean towards the veteran here in Brandon Moreno, who has a ridiculous resume in part of the flyweight division. I hope that his motivation is intact, and I hope that he goes out there and puts together a great performance. From a DFS aspect, I think that, you could stack the fight. You could target either side. There's value on both, in my opinion. But there's unknowns, so it's not a confident pick. So I can't confidently say Brandon Moreno's going to win, but I'm going to lean in his direction to edge out Amir Albazi over 5 rounds.
To me, the big question mark really is about the health of Albazi. I mean, when you look at the injuries that he had, that, there was a lot of discussions, the fact of, you shouldn't ever fight again. Now he's in this situation. I do believe if Amir Albazi does get the win here, he will become the number 1 contender and get the winner of the upcoming flyweight title fight there in December. Of course, we have no idea who now the main event is going to be of the December pay-per-view, with Bilal Muhammad being out. Necessarily did not really want to see that toe picture yesterday on my feed. I really did. You really didn't need to share that, Bilal. I really didn't need to see that toe, but I guess
it was not that bad.
But people were zooming in on it. Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's some freaks on Twitter that were zooming in on it, and it was popping up.
Come on,
popping
Jay.
Up my feed.
It was not that bad. It looked like a bruised. It looked like a broken toe with stitches on it. You saw worse than a couple weekends ago with Chris Godwin's ankle. So.
Yes. Yeah. That's always a sign when they won't show the replay.
Yeah,
it's bad. Exactly. That's when an injury is bad in a situation. I do like the value on Albazi, but the pick will be Moreno in this one. And one of the things that I do kind of see is I see the takedown route being there for Brandon Moreno in this one. Now, the co-main event is key matchup in the women's flyweight division. Got Erin Blanchfield taking on Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas is a slight betting underdog here, plus 110, minus 134. Erin Blanchfield. Blanchfield's $8,400 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Rose Namajunas, $7,800 on DK, and $16 on FanDuel. And I know in our Discord channel, people were talking about the value here of Rose Namajunas. Personally, I'm not big on this one in terms of a DFS and fantasy score projection, just because it is a 3-round fight. Of course, Erin Blanchfield coming off that loss against Manolo Figueroa back in March. One of the things that I wrote about Blanchfield here is, yes, she is 6-1 in the UFC, but her last 2 wins were notable wins. Prior to that, all fighters you expect her to be here. Of course, Namajunas, 2-1 since moving up to the 125-pound division. She has won back-to-back fights, and her last 4 fights have gone the distance, Pete.
Yeah, I think this fight's another one where it's difficult to trust, right? Like, it's a pretty binary fight, in my opinion. If it stays standing, Rose wins. If wrestling's incorporated, most likely Blanchfield wins, despite the fact that Rose has good takedowns. This is a 5-round bout, Jason.
Is it?
According to Tapology, it's a 5-round bout.
I'll look that one up.
Yeah, look that up, because if that's the case, it might be tough to avoid for DFS, right? I do think, though, after watching Blanchfield against Manolo Figueroa, everybody in the world's going to want to bet against her, because it was just not pretty. I mean, she did not really have the best success in the takedown department. She had no success. She went 0 of 3 in the takedown department, got chewed up on the outside, looked like a punching bag at times. It kind of reminded me of Vanessa Demopoulos on the Contender Series a long time ago, where you have an advantage on the mat. You just were unable to get it there. Threw 394 significant strikes, total strikes, I should say. Landed only 135 of them. Got sprawling, brawled, and even got taken down. It's tough because I do trust in Rose's resume, and when she's able to mix in her wrestling, she can win rounds. I mean, she looked good against Amanda Hebos. She also looked good, really good against Tracy Cortez. I just don't necessarily know if either one of those fighters are a specialist. Like, I think that Cortez's wrestling is really good. I think that Amanda Hebos, her judo, I think that she's pretty well-rounded. Erin Blanchfield is an expert in the submission grappling department. And we've seen Rose Namajunas, give up positions at times. I mean, she's been gun shy in the past against wrestlers that like have a true threat of finishing her. Carla Esparza, she was super gun shy. It was like the worst title defense in history. Jessica Andrade slammed her. We've also seen Carla Esparza choke her out back on The Ultimate Fighter back in 2014. Granted, that's forever ago. And we've seen Rose Namajunas stay active by competing in jiu-jitsu, super fights as well, going up against Jillian Robertson. And a part of this new weight class, like, I don't know, Jason. I just don't necessarily know if she's strong enough to contend with some of these high-end wrestlers, because one arm drag, one back take was all it took for Jillian Robertson to take the back and sink in a rear naked choke in, I think, under a minute in their grappling bout and finish Rose Namajunas. And it was kind of like, I know Rose has amazing jiu-jitsu. She has, she's great everywhere. She's one of the best female mixed martial artists of all time. I just think that she's susceptible to certain matchups. And on the feet, I significantly favor Rose Namajunas. I just wonder if Erin Blanchfield's size weighing against her, if she gets a takedown or if a scramble ensues. I think Blanchfield's jiu-jitsu is tremendous. So it's hard for me to say this, but I'm going to be leaning towards Erin Blanchfield here. So I'm not taking an underdog in either the main or co-main event.
And yes, it is a 5-round fight. I just found the UFC.com story that says it is a 5-round fight. I mean, the one thing I've always kind of thought about Rose and 125 is more about the size aspect of it. When taking on some of these females in this division, that's what kind of concerns me there. But look, I would say I would much rather take a underdog shot on the betting line with Rose Namajunas than I would a DFS aspect. I mean, I do see the higher fantasy upside on the Blanchfield side, especially if she does go to a grappling base there. Next up, we got a heavyweight matchup. We got Derrick Lewis taking on Diniz. Diniz, a minus 170 betting favorite, plus 140 for the Black Beast. Derrick Lewis, $7,600 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. Diniz, $600 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. And, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier is, if you want to take that sprinkle on Derrick Lewis to finally get a submission win in the UFC, this may be the case. I mean, you have to imagine that the thought process for the Lewis camp has been, look, we're going up against a kickboxer here, potentially taking this one to the ground here. I mean, when you look at Derrick Lewis, he is coming off that 3rd-round win back in May against Nascimento. 9 of his last 10 fights have ended via finish. Of course, the only one that was not was that decision loss against Jailton Almeida. Diniz 2-0 in the UFC, but really this is a massive step up in competition when you talk about who he has fought prior to this. Of course, coming off that win against Carl Williams, won his UFC debut against Austin Lane here. But this is where I gotta think, if you're coaching Derrick Lewis, the thought has got to be, if you see the opportunity to take this one to the ground, do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if he's gonna lace up his wrestling shoes, but I think that him being on the outside waiting against a high level kickboxer is just not the best game plan. So I think that he needs to be aggressive. And we joke about him picking up his first submission win, in the UFC. It's a possibility, right? Because we've seen Jhonata Diniz get mounted by Austin Lane, and we have seen Derrick Lewis start to incorporate his wrestling a little bit more lately than he used to. I mean, he shot 4 takedowns in his previous fight against Rodrigo Nascimento, landed one of them, had 3 minutes of control time, and ultimately finished him in the 3rd round. We've also seen him take down Tai Tuivasa, went 2 of 4 in the takedown department. So for me, I think that's such an easy way to win this bout, is to show the evolution, not from like a finishing standpoint, but like if he doesn't knock him out with these crazy exchanges, and you crash the pocket and you guys end up clinching, get your underhooks, work on tripping and landing takedowns and getting in top position. Whether that results in a ground and pound finish, whether that results in just, putting his body on him and smothering him, whether that results in just banking rounds. I think that Derrick Lewis can make this a very, very easy win. On the outside, I worry about his lead leg getting chewed up by leg kicks. I also worry about him getting stuck to the body with some shots and getting hurt to the body. I think like Derrick Lewis is susceptible to body work. He always is, and he always has some funny comment or some excuse, but I just think he's a sucker for body shots. And if Jhonata Diniz has been watching previous fights, he's going to dig to the body with a liver shot, with a front kick, start to chew that lead leg up. But sometimes kickers get a little too complacent, and maybe one caught kick results in a takedown. So you have to be very careful. It's hard for me not to back the guy in Derrick Lewis who has like a ridiculous amount of wins. What does he have? The most knockouts in UFC history or something ridiculous? I mean, he's seen it all. I think this is a massive step up in competition for Jhonata Diniz. You come into the UFC, you beat Austin Lane, you beat Carl Williams, both not necessarily unbelievable performances. I mean, he was nearly mounted and finished against Austin Lane, 4.5 minutes of control time, and ended up, getting the victory in round 2. And then in the Carl Williams fight, like Carl Williams was just too shy and too afraid of getting knocked out that he didn't shoot as many takedowns as he normally does. The second he did, it was easy work, and that was in the 3rd round where he landed 2 of 3 takedowns and had 2.5 minutes of control time. So like, it's a long-winded way for me to say that I think everybody's always waiting for the wheels to fall off from the Derrick Lewis camp. I just think, in heavyweight MMA, you can go to your 40. I really think you could go to your 45. Yeah. It's just how it is. It's the lowest level division out there. It's one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting. But like a guy in Derrick Lewis, I think should be improving over the past couple of years. So give me Derrick Lewis. The submission prop, does it happen? I don't know, but I mean, he could learn something silly like an arm triangle choke, or just a smother, and you get a panic tap out of Jhonata Diniz, who's never really been in that situation. Plus 2,800, even if it's $5, you know what I mean? Like, it's worth a shot. But I'll be picking the underdog here in in Derrick Lewis over Jhonata Diniz.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point. I think everyone's kind of wondering when will those wheels fall off for Derrick Lewis here. But I do see that clear path of him maybe getting to the ground, and maybe it's just utilizing his ground and pound there. So I do like him as a plus 140 underdog. Like him on FanDuel, like him on DK. I'll say this on FanDuel. I think there's some great value this week over there on FanDuel. Next up, we got Kyle Machado taking on Brendson Ribeiro. Machado making his light heavyweight debut. He did make weight here at 205 pounds. Of course, this is his 3rd fight in the UFC. He's dropped 2 of his first 2 fights in the UFC, both to be a decision against Parkin and Mays. Ribeiro also 0-2 in the UFC in this one. One thing to note, Ribeiro does have a 3-inch reach advantage in this one. Machado minus 150 betting fair, plus 125 for Ribeiro. Ribeiro 7,700 DK, $12 on FanDuel. Machado 8,500 on DK, and $17 on FanDuel. And Pete, I think the one question is, what does Machado look like as a light heavyweight as opposed to what we've seen from him as a heavyweight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a drastic change, weighing in at 250 pounds and then now making weight. I watched the weigh-ins. He looked great, Jason. Like, his body, it's a massive transformation. It seems like it's the rightful home. He had a lot to lose. He looks cut. He looks good. I would imagine that, like, being a former heavyweight now, he's going to be the stronger fighter in this matchup. He, for whatever reason, has always had pretty high volume. As long as it wasn't a death cut, I think that he can maintain that volume. And, normal heavyweights will struggle making the transition to a lighter weight class from the speed and volume standpoint. But not Caio Machado, in my opinion. I think like he kind of had a light heavyweight game, a part of heavyweight. So like, could he have stayed at heavyweight and just kind of gotten in better shape? Yeah. But maybe he's going to hold a massive strength advantage over some of these 205ers. So I thought that he looked good. Brendson Ribeiro is a guy that is literally a GPP type of target always because of the volatility within his game. The guy's been finished like 5-6 times throughout his career, been knocked out three times, I believe, been subbed as well. He throws with reckless abandon. You saw that in the Zhang Ming Yang fight. Sloppy at times, which for me being a technician, it's really hard for me to back some of these sloppy fighters, but I did just say that I was backing, Derrick Lewis, but he's kind of one of one. Brendson Ribeiro is just, there's mistakes that I see that certain fighters can capitalize on. And then you bring into the equation that Caio Machado is a southpaw, and I do think that really, I think that's an unspoken form of this game that is kind of glossed over. Is like in boxing, if somebody's fighting a southpaw, like they got to prepare for like a year. They hire all the best southpaws in the world or try, and they still struggle because it's such a difference fighting an orthodox fighter or fighting a southpaw fighter. Opposite stances are very, very difficult, and it tends to give the advantage to the southpaw. I think his previous fight going the distance against Magomed Ghaziasulov, getting taken down 5 times, getting 3 takedowns in his own right, but losing that fight via majority decision. I think that's an outlier. That's not what this guy is. This guy is a finisher or kill or be killed type of fighter. Caio Machado is a high volume decision fighter, but I feel like the game of Ribeiro might influence the finish rate for Caio Machado because Brentson's going to bring it and Caio's going to bring the volume. So going the distance against Kevin Soflarski, where he landed 121 significant strikes, going the distance with Mick Parkin and Don'Tale Mayes. I think that there's a world where Caio Machado finishes Brendson Ribeiro. I really do. I think that is totally possible. So I'm going to back the former heavyweight that to me looks really good on the scales. I don't know if it was a death cut or not. It did not appear to be. But he appears to have taken this camp seriously, and I'm going to be back in the southpaw here at Caio Machado.
When I was looking at the weigh-ins, the thing that really I wanted to stick out with him was, did he need the extra pound or not? And he weighed in at 205 pounds. So that's to me, that is a good sign there. I will say this. I do like the over 1.5 round prop on this one. It's minus 150. That's a bet that I'll be targeting tomorrow here. Next up, we got Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus is a plus 175 betting underdog. Minus 210 for Barriault. Barriault 8,900 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. Stoltzfus 7,300 on DK and $11 on FanDuel. Barriault has dropped back-to-back fights, as being against Chris Curtis and Joe Pfeiffer. Prior to those losses, he was 5-2 in his last 7. For Stoltzfus, he is 2-5 in the UFC. He's alternating wins and losses in the UFC in his last 4 fights. He started 0-3 in the UFC. One of the things that really sticks out to me is kind of the differences you see with strikes landed per minute and takedown average per 15 minutes fighting between these two guys. When you talk about the strikes landed per minute, Barriault 6.12, where Stoltzfus is at 3.51. But then when you talk about takedown average per 15 minutes of fighting, Barriault 0.21, but on the other side, Stoltzfus 2.45, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that Dustin Stoltzfus, after coming off a devastating knockout defeat to Bruno Ferreira, he needs to wrestle and wrestle early because if you stay on the outside or you get into a kickboxing match with Marc-Andre Barriault, the power bar is really just going to overwhelm you with his volume. So Dustin needs to go out there and implement his wrestling from the onset. We've seen him do it with success against Punahele Soriano. We've also seen him, get stifled against Abus Magomedov, Bruno Ferreira. Gerald Mearshart was able to come back. Rodolfo Vieira, Kyle Dawkins. The guy, Dustin Stoltzfus, is a very talented wrestler, very strong for the division. But he's really one-dimensional. His striking, in my opinion, is not good. His submission skills are below average, in my opinion. But if he's able to land a takedown, he can start to wear you out. It just doesn't matter in this situation. Like I think like against Punahele Soriano, he was able to just kind of outwork him because of the cardio of Dustin Stoltzfus and the poor cardio of Punahele Soriano. That's not going to be the case here against Marc-Andre Barriault. Like I understand Marc-Andre Barriault, he got smoked against Anthony Hernandez. I'm not going to hold that loss, above his head too harshly at all. Outside of that, though, like who's outworking Marc-Andre Barriault? Chris Curtis was on his bike, and that was a very competitive fight. But for the most part, like Marc-Andre Barriault gets stronger as the fight gets going. Yes, he did get knocked out against Joe Pyfer, but Stoltzfus just got knocked out against Bruno Ferreira, suffering some nerve damage in his face and broken orbital, broken cheekbone. So it's a lot to overcome with that being back in June. I personally like Marc-Andre Barriault here a lot. I do like his volume. I do like, for the most part, that he can defend most takedowns. Dustin Stoltzfus takedown accuracy sits at 41%. So he'll shoot for his life. He may get one, but if somebody gets back up on him, he struggles to kind of remat them or mat return them. So I'm going to be picking Marc-Andre Barriault to finish Dustin Stoltzfus inside of I think the second round makes sense to me. I like Marc-Andre Barriault here. The volume's great. I don't know if Stoltzfus can necessarily keep up. One back takes all it is all that, all it takes for Stoltzfus to necessarily get a finish, but I don't see it happening here. Give me Marc-Andre Barriault. I think he's at a sweet spot, price tag at $8,900, and I'm confidently going to be picking him this week, especially in front of his Canadian crowd.
He'll likely be a core play for me on this card. I would say this: I would rather get to him than the 9,000 options that are on this fight, because I do see that finish coming for him. Now, speaking of those 9,000 options, we got Mike Malott, who's at 9,200. He is being taken on here by Trevin Giles. Mike Malott is a minus 300 betting favorite, plus 240 for Trevin Giles. Giles is 7,000 DK, $9 on FanDuel. Malott 9,200 on DK and $21 on FanDuel. Of course, Malott is coming off that third round loss against Magny, where he was nearly a 4-1 betting favorite in that. Of course, all of his wins in the UFC have come by finishing the first or second round. Giles, things have not gone well for him in his last 6 fights here. And this is Mike Malott. You would, to me, this kind of seems like the matchmaking they're trying to set up here, fighting in his home country. I do like Mike Malott to win here and bounce back and get back on the winning side of things.
Yeah, I like Mike Malott a lot here, and didn't mean to rhyme there, but I really do like Mike Malott. The potential really jumps off the page with this guy. His striking's crisp, his power's great, his submission skills I think might be his best asset. He does have very, very good wrestling. I think that this kid's a stud. Going up there against Neil Magny, who holds one of, if not the most wins in the welterweight division or something ridiculous like that. Like, he was dominating Neil Magny and, kind of just completely gassed out in round 3 after putting together a very strong performance from the takedown department and the control and everything. He was just looking so dominant, and then really just gassed out. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. Just kind of really just had no answer to Neil Magny's overcoming the adversity and putting it on him, and ended up getting finished with, the round nearly ending. So it's a red flag, but I do like the intelligence of Mike Malott and his assessment of the fight and how he's taken proper time away, and, talked about how they went and they reevaluated the entire lead up to certain fights, making changes, making adjustments, trying to improve as a fighter in the gym and under the lights. So I do think that, we will see Mike Malott make some adjustments. I think that Trevin Giles is still a game opponent. The problem is like Giles, I don't know if his manager or what, but they constantly put him in very difficult fights. I mean, look at Prates, Bonefim, Morales, Duplessis. You know what I mean? Like, you'll go through this guy's entire career, and it's just like, holy moly, he's fought a lot of tough opponents, and he's been finished in a lot of his defeats. And I think that's what we're going to see here. Mike Malott will either hurt him on the feet or capture the neck and submit him. So I like Mike Malott here a lot at 9,200 in front of his Canadian crowd. I think he's going to get back to his winning ways here.
One of the interesting things I saw with Mike Malott this week was the interview he had with Erin, where he basically talked about getting off social media and getting away from the comments and basically saying, I just can't let those people get in my head, and that is the mental side of the sport here. But I do like my in this situation. Next up, we got a match between Aiemann Zahabi and Pedro Munhoz. Zahabi a minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Pedro Munhoz. Munhoz $8,300 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Zahabi $7,900 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. This is a betting line that's been going back and forth. Where a couple days ago Zahabi was the underdog, now the betting favorite. In this one, Zahabi very quietly has won 4 in a row. He has been the betting underdog in all 4 of those fights. He was a plus 160 dog, plus 180 dog, plus 100, and then his last matchup against Barriault, he was plus 575. For Pedro Munhoz, he has lost back-to-back fights against Chito Vera and Kyle Phillips. His last 9 fights has not gone well for him here. 2-6 with 1 no contest. This is I think from a DFS perspective, I don't think I really love the matchup. But if you're telling me I can get some dog money on Pedro Munhoz, I do like the underdog shot here from a betting perspective.
Yeah, so I think from a DFS perspective, it's almost unplayable, right? Like you're going to have a chalky Aiemann Zahabi at 7,900, and you have Pedro Munhoz probably at one of the best leverage spots on the card at 8,300, where he is the actual betting underdog. So it doesn't happen all that often, sometimes for the 8,200, 8,000 fight. But, it's a close fight, right? Like we've seen Aiemann Zahabi go on a streak. Guy that I have not been high on. I got to tell you, I have not been high on at all. And I might have picked his opponents majority of the time, right? Like against Rodriguez, Tercios, Arichi Lang, and Basharat. I definitely picked Basharat. I'll tell you that. I'm a big Basharat guy. The thing is that Zahabi and his brother Faraz, they just come up with amazing game plans. And you saw Rob Font put together one of the best game plans last week or the week prior, I can't remember, against Kyler Phillips. And that's because of the tutelage of Faraz Zahabi. Going out there and, pressuring Kyler Phillips, getting him on his back foot, making him feel uncomfortable from the onset, really exposing that poor cardio. Like these guys are masterful, coaches and game planners and strategists, and I do think that like Zahabi should have a proper game plan. I just, for whatever reason, I really like Pedro Munhoz, and I do like the fact that he's also coming from a super camp and American top team. It's not that we're getting Zahabi against a guy coming from like a middle of the pack team. You're getting American top team in that room of of American top team with Pedro Munhoz. The grappling element that he possesses, his beautiful guillotine. He's got a fantastic guillotine. It's been quite some time since we've seen a guillotine finish from Mr. Pedro Munhoz. I mean, do I expect there to be some grappling in this bout? Sure. I know that Aiemann Zahabi is a very good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner as well. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that I remember Pedro Munhoz at one time where I was like, this guy's guillotine is so nasty, and I love it. So I'm a little intrigued to see what this submission line is for him. Plus 1,200. Is it likely to hit? No, it's not. But there's a situation where some grappling elements are implemented. So I might throw small money on that. I will lean a little bit towards Pedro Munhoz to win this bout. But from a DFS perspective, I'm not necessarily sure that it's something I'm going to prioritize.
Yeah, it's a DFS perspective. I just don't like the fantasy score upside on either one of these guys. I think the likely scenario is it probably does go 15 minutes. But if you told me I had to play someone in this matchup, I would play Pedro Munhoz. But there's other fighters in that 88,000 to 85 range that I'd rather play than Pedro Munhoz. Next up, we got Silva and Jasmine. Jasmine is a minus 235 betting favorite to Silva plus 190. Of course, this is for those who are not aware, this is Ariane Lipsky, now Ariane de Silva. She's 7,200 on DK, $10 on FanDuel, where Jasmine on the other side, 9,000 on DK and $20 on FanDuel. Of course, for Silva, her 3-fight winning streak was snapped back in April against Corrine Silva. 6-6 in the UFC. Her most notable win in the UFC is against Casey O'Neill. Of course, for Jasmine, she's 4-1 in her last 5, coming off a decision win here. Jasmine at 9,000. This is where I don't know if can she go out there and get me 105 points?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that I think it's a tailor-made matchup for Jasmine Jasudavicius, where you have a very good wrestler going up against a fighter that can sometimes be a little too complacent off of her back. We just saw Ariane de Silva get taken down 5 times against Karine Silva. Karine Silva is an absolute monster for this division. I really do. I think that she's somebody that we need to circle going forward. And if you haven't already done it, 506 at a takedown department, 7.5 minutes of control time. Didn't get finished in that fight, which speaks to the improvement of Ariane de Silva, Ariane Lipski, where in the past we have seen her get punched out, and kind of succumb to pressure. But she's very tricky because certain fights she looks really, really talented. Like I remember when she was cross training with Cyborg, and I really liked it. I was like, wow, okay, well, we're seeing some improvements. Sometimes she's able to land takedowns, but she's not going to be landing takedowns in this fight against Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think that Jasmine, with the hometown crowd, she's going to go out there. She may get punched up and may get doubled up on the strike count, but she can change levels and she can take people down and just has great top pressure. We've seen her submit Priscilla Cachoeira, but outside of that, it's a decision fighter with tons of control time. I'm with you, though. I think like the 90-point range is most likely because I don't think that Ariane de Silva is going to be dead from the onsite. I think that she's going to have some moments. So I think that Jasudavicius wins a decision. And I don't necessarily think that Lipski continues to get back to her feet. It's not a fight where like, okay, well, the takedown numbers can be inflated because of the get-up ability of her opponent. I don't really think so. I think that if Ariane de Silva gets taken down, she's staying there for the rest of the round. So, the takedown numbers may be capped a little bit, but I'll still be picking Jasmine Jasudavicius to win a decision here.
Yeah, I like Jasmine winning a decision here as well, but from a DFS aspect, don't know if I would rather get to, say, a Marc-Andre Barriault because I like the finishing ability that he has in that matchup. Next up, we've got the UFC bantamweight debut of Charles Jourdain taking on Victor Henry. Henry is a plus 105 betting underdog, minus 125 for Jourdain. Jourdain, $8,200 on DK, $15 on FanDuel, or Victor Henry is $8,000 on DK and $14 on FanDuel. Of course, for Jourdain, he has dropped 2 straight, 2-4 in his last 6 fights. 3 of those losses have come via decision. For Victor Henry, he's come off a 3rd-round win against Yahya. He is 3-1 with no contest in the UFC, and both these guys are volume punchers, Pete.
Yeah, I'm a little confused with this fight, right? Because I don't necessarily know if 35 Charles Jourdain is going to be like unbelievable. I think that Victor Henry puts out a lot of output. His volume is relatively unmatched. Hownie Barcelos, 181 significant strikes, 154 significant strikes against Tony Gravely, 109 significant strikes with a finish against Hani Yahya. Charles Jourdain is more of the big moment type of guy where I could see the minute winner being Victor Henry. We have seen Jourdain put up a volume in the past, but like 137 against Andre Ewell, 113 against Shane Burgos. I wonder if he's going to deplete himself a little too much in this fight. So it's not a confident pick by any stretch of the imagination. I do like Charles Jourdain's, UFC career a little bit more. I have seen him improve in the submission department as well. I mean, he's lost me a lot of money by submitting some people I thought would beat him. But Victor Henry is not going to get submitted, in my opinion. I mean, he comes from a great jiu-jitsu background, or I should say catch wrestling background under Josh Barnett. I think it's a competitive fight, and I think it's a pass for me for DFS. I mean, like, maybe the volume is ridiculous, and it's a crazy paced fight that they end up breaking the slate, being at that price tag, but I don't necessarily think so. I think that it's going to be one that's optically a little confusing, where it's going to be like the minute winner versus the moment winner. And I'll be picking Charles Jourdain slightly, but it's not my favorite fight.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me about this one is Jourdain going down to 35 at this point in his fighting career. What does that look like? maybe it rejuvenates him, but and then of course the other side you got Victor Henry at 37 years old. But if I was going to play one side or not, I would rather go the Victor Henry side. Could be a fight to necessarily maybe try to target over on FanDuel just because of what their pricing is on that one. Next up, we got Jack Shore taking on Youssef Zalal. Youssef Zalal a minus 330 betting fair plus 255 for Shore. Shore 7,100 DK, $9 on FanDuel. For Zalal, 9,100 on DK. And $22 on FanDuel. For Jack Shore, coming off a second-round loss against Joe Anderson, Brito started 5-0 in the UFC. Is now 1-2 in his last 3 fights. Youssef Zalal 2-0 since coming back to the UFC. Both those wins. His last 3 wins, by the way, have come by first-round submission here. And his strikes land per minute, 2.87 for Zalal, 3.75 for Jack Shore. And, one of the things of, and I think sometimes you see maybe fighters get to the UFC maybe a little too quickly. And I think we've really seen with Youssef Zalal, when you think about, the type of fighter he was in his first run and now this different run, I think you've really seen the evolution of his game, Pete.
Yeah, I've always been a big Youssef Zalal guy. Really been a big Youssef Zalal guy. And I just think that the sky's the limit. This is the same fighter that fought Ilia Topuria. And yeah, he got beaten in that fight, but he didn't get finished. Look what Topuria's done lately. So, I always thought that the potential was there. It was just very difficult matchmaking. There were winnable fights. Like in hindsight, Sung Woo Choi shouldn't have lost that fight. Shouldn't have lost that Sean Woodson fight. Had a draw against Amon Blackshear. Probably still shouldn't have lost that one, in my opinion. But, went back, fought in the regional scene, fought in kickboxing as well, had that ridiculous run. Now he's back and he looks better than ever. I think that momentum's a real thing in this game. So he's got all the momentum in the world, back-to-back finishes over Billy Quarantillo and Jarno Aarons and showcasing his jiu-jitsu. I think that is striking, and just like he's kind of got like Corey Sandhagen type of vibes where he's just so slick on the feet with his movement and his fluidity. But he does have that wrestling. Corey's improved and developed wrestling as well, but I think that the jiu-jitsu of Youssef Zalal is kind of like that X factor too. So I think in any fight, he can just do whatever the hell he wants. You know what I mean? He's a complete fighter, in my opinion. And Jack Shore's a guy that we all had, high hopes for, and he's kind of fallen flat a little bit against Ricky Simon. That was kind of where it was exposed, and then getting TKO'd against Joe Anderson Brito because of the brutal leg kicks. That was also showcased. So it's tough for me to get away from Youssef Zalal. It's a tough fight. I don't think that this is an easy fight, but it's a notable win if he's able to go out there and make Jack Shore look human. So give me Youssef Zalal here. Not necessarily sure if I love the DFS score of Youssef Zalal. Recently he's been a monster, 99.3 and 101, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of feeling a decision here against Jack Shore.
Yeah, I like Zalal in this opportunity, and I really liked what I've seen out of him in this second run here in the UFC. Next up, let's just call this matchup, whose cardio do you trust more? Alexander Romanov or Rodrigo Nascimento? Straight up pick him on the betting odds, minus 110 on both sides. Romanov, 7,900 DK, $13 on FanDuel. Nascimento, 8,300 on DK and $16 on FanDuel. Of course, me and you have talked about Romanov, and there was a time where, we were, I think we talk about any time there's a Romanov fight of, God, how stupid do we look when we are comparing him and who had a higher ceiling, him or Tom Aspinall back in the day? Yeah. And how, one guy has ascended to maybe the best heavyweight in the world, or at least in discussion, where Romanov, a guy that you just really don't know. He is coming off that loss against Jourdain Almeida. Did have a grappling matchup back in July. The one thing, and this is a note that I wrote about Romanov, is what's his best UFC win? Martinez, De Lima, Sherman, Blagoy. It's probably Blagoy, you would say, is his best win there. You look at Nascimento, he did have his 4-fight unbeaten streak snap back in May against Derrick Lewis. His previous 3 wins have come via decision here. Look, obviously with Romanov, you love the takedown upside. He averages 4 takedowns per 15 minutes of fighting, but it is tough to trust that cardio of his.
Yeah, so there wasn't somebody out there that was more of a Romanov supporter than me, right? Like, you guys know, I plant my flag on certain fighters. Was right on Tom Aspinall, was right on Hamza Chimaev. Blanchfield, for the most part, looked the part, except for her previous performance. Romanov's the guy that he did look amazing for the longest, but it was matchup dependent. And I don't necessarily know if I like this matchup either. I mean, against Rodrigo Nascimento, coming from a MMA camp of American top team caliber, it's just like something I really don't like, because I don't think that Romanov trains with the type of camp that he needs to in order to succeed at this level. Heavyweights are hard to come by, but once you reach a certain point in the UFC, you have to, like, I almost would rather him just go to Vegas and live at the PI. You know what I mean? He's probably better off in a situation like that, where I know that he can be in shape, and I know that there will be a constant revolving door of bodies at the PI. And you're in Vegas, right? Like, you can get anybody there. I don't know, man. It's really hard for me to trust Alexander Romanov, especially when, got smoked against Jailton Almeida so quickly. Jailton does that to almost everybody, but still, it just goes to show, Romanov's human, and Romanov can be exposed, especially if he's put in a compromising position. So Rodrigo Nascimento, a guy I have not been high on at all, really. He's got the better striking in this matchup, in my opinion. I think that Romanov's striking is ass. I don't think it's good. I think it's just explosive. It's all to set up his takedowns, which are just high amplitude takedowns, big slams. He can get in top position and win rounds. He can ground and pound people. That's what really made his career early on, was taking people down, mounting them, and ground and pounding them. But against a jiu-jitsu practitioner and a guy so versed from American Top Team, I just don't see that happening in this matchup. It could, and it could be a hindsight call where it's wow, Romanov was a dog. We should have just capitalized. It's still I think that Romanov's going to win early, and then I think he's going to fatigue. And I think that Rodrigo Nascimento round 2, round 3, or decision makes a ton of sense, because on the feet, I think that Rodrigo Nascimento's boxing cleaner. I also think that he has takedowns. I also think that he has submission skills. He can take the back of a fatigued Romanov, sink the hooks in, and work towards a rear naked choke. We've already seen that give up ability from Romanov kind of be exposed. So, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to be picking Rodrigo Nascimento here. I think it's a decision win, or a late finish for him. So I don't necessarily know if I love the price tag on either one, or the production. So it'll be a Nascimento play for me, a Nascimento pick for me. But if I was to play DFS, I think the clear side for DFS is get to Romanov.
Oh, I think on the FanDuel side of the equation, it is very tough to get away from Romanov at $13. That to me is, if you're playing on the FanDuel side of the equation, I might just start my line. It might just start my line with Romanov. That's where I just start with him in terms of that, just because of the value you get there. Matt, do appreciate the super chat over there. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm still waiting for my auto insurance to pay me out. Still waiting for that to come through here. It's obviously, I know there's a lot of people are in my situation with flooded out car and trying to get all that taken care of. But I will be. I hate to say this. Romanov might be. I'm not going to feel good about this, Pete. He might be in that core lineup
for DraftKings.
Yes,
it's a little early to be drinking, Jason. But hey, shoot.
Look,
I mean,
if he goes out there and he can implement that takedown and do what he does, I mean, man, it's a $7,900 price tag really sticks out to me. Next up, we got Sade and Armfield. Armfield, plus 120 betting, underdog minus 140 for Sade. Sade, $8,600 DK, $17 on FanDuel. Armfield, $7,600 DK, and $12 on FanDuel. Of course, Sade lost his UFC debut back in January against Ramon Tavares. That was a split decision. That was a rematch from the Contender Series where he had won the first matchup via first round TKO. Armfield is coming off a third-round submission loss against Brady. He stands 2-2 in the UFC. Both of his losses have come via a submission here. Both, you look at the strikes land per minute, pretty identical, 5.15 for today, 5.59 for Armfield. This is a fight that you would totally expect to stay up on the feet here in this one, but Armfield is, I talked about there's a underdog on this card I'm really leaning towards, and it is Garrett Armfield.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault you there. Matt Riley, thank you so much for your support, man. I mean, between the gifted memberships and the super chats, I mean, thank you so much. And to everybody else, thank you so much as well. Really do appreciate it. I do like Garrett Armfield here, but I do think that there's a little worry as well. In submission matchups or matchups with opponents that have a submission skill set, there's a little bit of quit in them, a little bit. And I will just say when the going gets tough, it's great when you're the hammer. How do you handle being the nail for a moment? I mean, sometimes there's panic, right? Like it's an MMA fight. And I'll tell you what, Jason, I used to do it. I used to do it because like you're in an MMA bout, and even though it's an agreed competitive bout, it still seems like life or death in that cage. I got to be honest, Jason. It really does. So like, especially early on, like for me when I didn't have a ground game, you panic tap or you panic in certain situations because it does seem like life or death. I saw some moments against Brady Heistand there, but man, he did look good on the feet. He looked really good. His hands are crispy. Like he knocked down Brady Heistand. It says one knockdown. I counted two. He has a very good jab, very good straight punches. He has wrestling in his back pocket if he needs it, where he used to wrestle collegiately out of Missouri. It's just like scrambles tend to get away from him a little bit. And like scrambles are all about who gives up first in a way, and who can kind of just work through positions. And if you kind of just like give up on a scramble, you're really in a compromised situation. So that's what happened against Brady Heistand. I mean, like even in the first round, second round, there were moments where Heistand was like in great position. 3 of 7 in the takedown department, 2 minutes and 47 seconds of control time, 1:32 of control time, and then capitalized in the third round when Garrett was tired. Brady's tough, man. Brady's a tough out. Garrett has a win over Brad Katona, Jason. That means something, right? Like Brad Katona's good. I mean, yes, he did just lose to Gene Matsumoto, but that was a close fight. Katona's a 2-time Ultimate Fighter champion. You know what I mean? He's an Ultimate Fighter winner twice. I think that does mean something, and Armfield could easily win his fight against Serhi City, where like City has shown a susceptibility of getting hit with big shots, hurt, wears damage pretty poorly. I mean, he did finish Ramon Tavares in the Contender Series bout, questionable stoppage, got dropped in their rematch recently, and did pick up a split decision victory. I think this is a close fight, Jason. I do think it's a close fight. I worry about the hometown crowd getting behind Serhi City. The Canadian, just kind of backing him on everything that he does. I will say that Garrett Armfield's one of the best value plays out there, in my opinion, because extensive amateur career, lots of pro fights as well. Can wrestle, shows some promise even in his losses. Serhi City, I think, is going to be a dogfight, right? And I looked, and as long as Serhi City doesn't, capitalize on some submission opportunities, I think that Garrett Armfield's in this fight. So I will pick Garrett Armfield to win the decision here. I do think it's a competitive fight, though. I don't think it's a blowout either way.
Yeah, I potentially like a late finish by Armfield in this one in terms of getting that TKO finish there in terms of that one.
Interesting.
Next up, we got Chad Anheliger taking on Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson is a 2-1 betting favorite, plus 170 for Anheliger. Anheliger, 7,500 DK, $10 on FanDuel. Gibson, a 700 DK and $19 on FanDuel. Of course, Chad is coming off a win back in March, 2-2 in the UFC. For Gibson, he's coming off a first-round submission win versus Brian Kelleher back there in July. Did snap a 2-fight losing streak for him. The strikes landed per minute, very similar. The one thing about Cody Gibson is his takedowns average per 15 minutes fighting is a little higher than Anheliger in this one.
Yeah, I mean, man, I just think that Cody Gibson wins this fight. I'm not a big Chad Anheliger guy. Yes, he won me money against Charalampos Gregorio. I just think that he's mid-tier, and I think that Cody Gibson's a part of that same territory. I know that he actually puts in a lot of work, his strength and conditioning program. He looks really good on the scales. He has a ton of fights, ton of experience. On The Ultimate Fighter, was able to pick up finishes. I think that there's a sneaky way for him to finish Chad Anheliger via submission, because we've seen him do it on the Ultimate Fighter via arm triangle. We've also seen him do it to Brian Kelleher recently. I think he's going to be bigger and stronger, man. He's a big 135er at 5'10", and Helliger's 5'6". There's a 7-inch reach advantage for Cody Gibson. I think that he can win this fight however he wants, and Helliger tends to dance on the outside. Give me Cody Gibson to win this pretty easily, in my opinion. But from a DFS aspect, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to pay off because I don't necessarily know. I'm thinking 15-minute decision. And in some decisions, I don't necessarily know if he's going to score all that great because I'm not expecting a Brad Katona type of output. Yeah. But, I mean, he did just pick up a finish over Kelleher and scored 110. So we'll have to see. I kind of want to see where ownership's at or what I'm projecting ownership to be at because 8,700 Cody Gibson, I know you don't like it. I might take a little bit more of a risk and target him a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, someone that, maybe you look at, maybe ownership's going to be low when we're talking about some of these larger field GPPs. Maybe you do want to take a shot there. In terms of that one, I did have to laugh watching the Don Davis town hall with MMA fighting, and they're like, hey, Brian Kelleher's available. Do you want to sign him? I'm like, that's who you want the PFL to go sign, Brian Kelleher? It's like, okay.
Shout out Brian Kelleher.
Yeah, there's a reason he's not in the UFC at this point. There is a reason why he's not in the UFC. And then, of course, our opening fight of the night be a female matchup. We got Horth and Petrovic. Petrovic is the betting underdog here at plus 185, minus 225 for Jamie Lynn Horth. She is $800 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. For Petrovic, $7,400 on DK and $10 on FanDuel. Horth coming off that decision loss there back in December of last year against Hardy. This is only her fifth fight since 2020. Petrovic coming off a third-round submission in her last matchup. She did lose her UFC debut against Carolina here. But the one stat that does stick out to you is Petrovic takedown average per 15 minutes of fighting, 2.83, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is low-level women's mixed martial arts. I think that Jamie Lynn Horth sits at 6-1 in her professional career, where Ivana Petrovic is 7-1. If you look and you dive into their careers a little bit, I mean, you have Jamie Lynn Horth 3-0 as an amateur, and you have Petrovic with some amateur experience as well. I mean, she was 5-1 as an amateur. The one thing I just noticed after looking at their records, Jamie Lynn Horth has 2 amateur victories. Granted, it was back in 2016 and 2017 over Lupita Godinez. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make me feel good about my pick. Well, I was initially leaning towards Ivana Petrovic to pull off the upset here, just because I'm not entirely sold on Jamie Lynn Horth. I think that she's bigger. She's, she seems to have a little bit more weight behind her, despite what the metrics say at 5'8" for Petrovic versus Horth at 5'7", 4-inch reach advantage for Petrovic. I like the fact that Petrovic is a southpaw. And you heard me talk about Caio Machado recently about having that southpaw X factor. I really do like that. Jamie Lynn Horth did just fight a southpaw in Veronica Hardy, though, so she went to a split decision. That was a little odd because I thought that Veronica Hardy would do so much better in that matchup. It was just odd to me, but I kind of think that Veronica Hardy should be a weight class below. She seemed a little undersized in that bout. Petrovic here, she's just a dog. Like, even if I go and I watch her regional scene, like, if she gets hurt, she gets busted up. She's a pretty girl, but if she gets busted up, she just keeps going. She don't care. She will clinch, initiate takedowns, constantly looking for submission victories. I mean, she even took down Luana Carolina, who's gigantic. I mean, she seems a lot taller than she really is. 5'6" at a 69-inch reach. But for the most part, for that division, she's huge. And Petrovic goes out there and lands takedowns and wins minutes and attempts 2 submissions. So I like her grappling. I think that, she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, and Jamie Lynn Horth is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt as well. I almost think I like Petrovic's MMA grappling more than Jamie Lynn Horth, who uses it defensively a little bit. So, we saw Haley Cowan take down Jamie Lynn Horth twice in their bout and, had 2 minutes of control time in round 2 and almost 2 minutes of control time in round 3. I kind of like Ivana Petrovic coming through as an underdog here, and it could be a hindsight call where I'm like, man, why did I do that? But anytime I see these low level women's MMA bouts with such wide odds, I just think it's closer than that. I'm not entirely sold on Jamie Lynn Horth just because she won a split decision with Veronica Hardy. I think that was mainly because of Hardy just not having her best performance. But give me Ivana Petrovic here as an underdog at 7,400.
Plus, he also has a 4-inch reach advantage. This one. Also note the new unified rules that May are in effect for this one, 12-6 elbows. So that is something to kind of think about in terms of this one. Let's get into our straight-up fight picks on this one. The main event, it's a close fight to me. I think it's closer than what the betting odds say, but I will go with the favorite, Brandon Moreno.
I agree with you. It's very close. I'll go Brandon Moreno.
Co-main event, I'm going to go Blanchfield because of the grappling.
Yeah, I mean, the 5 rounds really screws this whole prediction up, but I'm going to go Blanchfield.
Next one, I'm going to go Lewis, but I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I'm going Derrick Lewis. I think he wrestles.
I'll go Machado. Barriault. Malott. I'll go with my first underdog in Pedro, or second underdog in Pedro Munhoz.
Yeah, betting underdog. I'm going to go Pedro Munhoz as well.
I'll go Jasmine. Give me underdog number 3, Victor Henry.
Ooh, interesting. I'm going to go Jourdain.
I'll go Zalal. Romanov.
Wow. I'm going to go Nascimento.
Underdog number 4, Armfield.
I'm going to go Armfield. Jesus, Jason, you like underdogs, huh?
Gibson. And I'll go Horth.
All right, I'll go Petrovic.
Get some questions over from Discord. Value plays underneath 8K and a core 3 on DraftKings. A core 3 for me. I think it's got to be, you got to go one side on the main event just because of the 5-round nature. Likelihood it's going to go 25 minutes. So I would go, I would say Moreno. Barriault would be number 2 in that equation. Then my third one, God, I'm not going to feel good about this one. Romanov.
Stop it, dude. Whatever you put in your coffee today.
When he goes out there and scores 130, I'm just going to be lighting you up.
Yeah, but for GPPs, I get it. But for a confident core? No, man, I think if you have to go main, co-main, and then find one fighter that you feel really confident about. I'm with you with Barriault. So yeah. Main, co-main, and Barriault.
Value plays underneath 8,000. I think you look at Albazi at 7,700. Because of the 5-round nature, Namajunas at 7,800. Lewis, you got the knockout upside, 7,600, potentially takedown upside as well in terms of that one. Outside of that, and from a GPP aspect, Romanov is 7,900. You know where you go there. Armfield, I potentially looking at maybe a late stoppage, but could be a nice little cash core build for you there because likely it does, potentially goes 15 minutes and it's a striking matchup.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to go 15 minutes. So I'm with you on the others. I think that Lewis is the guy. You like Romanov, I like Lewis this week.
Top leverage plays. Cody Gibson could be an interesting leverage play in terms of that.
I think Pedro Munhoz clearly being the underdog priced at 8,300 is one of the best leverage plays on the entire slate.
Best inside distance fighter and fighters. Inside distance, you got to look at the heavyweight matchups. Lewis, Diniz, Romanov, and Nascimento. Barriault, I think, is another interesting inside the distance fighter. No, Malott probably be another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you.
Top punt plays. Petrovic?
I wouldn't necessarily call her a punt. She's 74. I guess. I don't like anything else beneath her. Giles, Shore, De Silva, Stoltzfus. So yeah, I guess that's probably the lowest I'll go.
You look at best decision odds. I think there's several fights I look at. Zahabi Munhoz, I like going 15 minutes. I think the main event likely probably goes 25 minutes as well. Horth Petrovic, I would probably guess goes 25 minutes or 15 minutes as well. I see a lot of decisions on this card. I really do.
Yeah. You know what I didn't notice? The freaking box score of Victor Henry is nuts.
Yeah.
122, 106, 113. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Making
see
him
here.
a little bit more interesting now.
Favorite parlays. If I was going to go with a 3-fighter parlay, I would start with Barriault. That's where I would start the parlay with. And then if I'm looking for confident plays, I think I would go Gibson and Jasmine.
Barriault, Gibson, Jasmine. I don't hate that. I like that.
The Jason and Pete special. The first fight of the night, I just don't really love from a GPP aspect. That could be more of a live betting aspect in that. The 8,200, 8,000. That's the Pete special. Of course, you talked about that a little bit earlier. In terms of Jourdain and Victor Henry there. I don't know if I really love getting that one in terms of GPPs. Road to the Manchester Series, over under 6.5. So we got 14 fights. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to say under.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see a lot of decisions, man.
Best captain for captain mode. I would say this. I think a lot of people are going to lean on Moreno and Blanchfield because of takedown upside for both of them in that one. If I'm looking to go anywhere, I think the safe play would be Barriault. I really do.
My worry is if he just wins, but
yeah,
it goes a distance. Like he scored 80 against Anders. He scored 80 against Dolce Lungambula, who we know has terrible cardio. So, like, I think he's a perfect bet, but maybe not the best DFS if, like, we're big braining it and thinking that, Stoltzfus doesn't death gas.
Yeah, I mean, they just posted the captain contest up there. I mean, just kind of looking at, Barriault be 13-5. If you want to go Moreno, 12-3, so you could certainly save a little bit of money if you want to go there. Pedro Munhoz, 11,100. He's actually has a higher salary than Aiemann Zahabi. Albazi may not be another sneaky one at 9,000 if you want to go. In terms of that, let's look over here at the YouTube aspect of it before we kind of wrap up this episode of Fight HQ. Just kind of scroll down here, see if there's any questions that we have not gotten to at this point.
I didn't see Jourdain weigh in.
I was going to check out the weigh-ins. I saw the results of the weigh-ins. Everyone did make weight in terms of this one. Of course, next week will be Apex card. I believe that's going to be the last Apex card for a long time as they're about to do some renovations there on the UFC Apex, which is great news for us. And I will say this. The tickets for UFC Tampa went on sale. I'm not going to be in town. I'll be in LA that weekend. But they're actually not expensive. $75 is the cheap ticket to get into UFC Tampa.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, that's how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I actually had someone hit me up. They didn't realize I was out of town. That they're a Lightning season ticket holder, and they had a chance to go into the All Access Club for $275 a ticket. I was like, oh, do that, man. Go ahead and do that. That's a good deal in terms of that one. But, of course, as always, we appreciate everyone who tunes in to Fight HQ each and every week. Of course, you can check us out right here on YouTube. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. As Pete mentioned, try to get us over 100 likes. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do that. We do have subscriptions available as well, so be sure to check out that. We're going to offer some additional content for members here of the YouTube community. Of course, also available on the podcast channels as well.
I'm looking at Jourdain weighing in, bro. He looks emaciated, in my opinion. I mean, he's shredded, but like, it's not always beneficial. I mean, and we got Victor Henry saying, if he strikes me, cool, I'll put my volume to work. But Henry's got crazy volume.
He does.
So,
he does.
Maybe I might be going towards Henry now. I might have just flipped my pick. I'm flipping my pick officially. Flipping my pick to Victor Henry. So hopefully you tune into the end of the show.
One of the things I think when I think of Victor Henry was, you remember his no contest, he, took it to the family jewels, and the referee was questioning him whether he truly got hit there. You don't remember that? No. And then Josh Barnett basically put out a throw like, yeah, he's not doing well. We're in the hospital.
Yeah, he was in the hospital for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was a bad one. That was a bad one there, but hopefully everyone, if you do have any additional questions, you can hit those up in the YouTube comments or over in Discord. In the comment section, let us know your bold call. Who is that underdog this week that you're going to be targeting? Maybe it's going to be that core play for you, or maybe, who is that high-end option that you want to get to this week? Pete, anything else you want to discuss?
Pedro Munhoz, guillotine. You heard it here first. I'm just feeling it. Plus 1,200. I'm feeling it. That's what I'm calling.
Got to cash it in. Got to cash it in.
Yeah.
By the way, did you do a little trick or treating last night?
Sure did. I sure did. It was pretty cool. My daughter's starting to understand things a little bit more. Only a year and a half. She doesn't need the candy or anything, but just for the experience. Leah was Princess Leia last night, so it was pretty cool.
I mean, are you stealing the candy? I mean,
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, our neighborhood's small, so it was cool to just go see the neighbors and get some of the candy. But man, it was just so sweet. It was so cool seeing her experience it. She's brave too. It's funny when she sees the stuff that's scary.
I've seen some of the stuff you post on. You and Brady post online.
Oh yeah, she's freaking hilarious.
That's awesome. Of course, as I mentioned earlier in the show, if we do have a show next week, it would be on Friday. So we'll keep be in our Discord channel, let everyone know. Of course, I'll be looking forward to some KC barbecue on Sunday night. Looking forward to that. This is a road trip I've been waiting for. We haven't been to KC in 8 years.
You guys are about to get barbecued on Monday night too. So there you go. you could have double. You could have 2 servings of getting barbecued. How's that?
You know what?
If you guys are fully healthy, I would like you. But hey, bro, maybe you guys still do it. Baker's playing out of his mind.
We if there was a camera at the goal line last week, I think it's a different story.
Yeah. Doesn't he lead the league in touchdown passes or something silly like that?
Yeah. He's got 21 touchdowns so far.
Jesus.
Yeah, and Bucky Irvin, I think.
And if he does it this week with no help, that would be really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, last week was obviously the first game without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and really you saw a lot of guys. Kate Otten really became a go-to target. Bucky Irvin, man, is looking like maybe the steal of the draft. That kid,
he's so good.
The way he moves, it's unreal. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, I had a buddy who lives out in Oregon. When we drafted him, he's like, "Hey, man, you're getting a hell of a player." And it's it'll be fun. KC, I will tell you this, man, that place is loud. I mean,
oh yeah,
like when it comes to outdoor stadiums, it's them and Seattle as the loudest stadiums in the league.
Mm-hmm. Now imagine being in that division, and I got to deal with freaking Mahomes twice a year. It's so annoying.
Mahomes is not having a Mahomes type year.
He's not. He's not at all. He's playing terrible, actually. But they still win, though. It's funny. They're undefeated, and he's playing horrible.
Yeah. Then, of course, next week I'll be down in Miami, Double Down FC2. That'll be on Friday night. Will be streamed on YouTube, so you can be able to check out. I'll be on the call with Shannon Crowder and Emilio Uriti. I think we've got like 15 fights currently. But
That's a good number. Hopefully you guys stick around that 10.
Yeah. You are well aware of what fight week will look like.
Book 20 to get 10. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, very, very much so. There is, I will say this: there is a heavyweight on the card. Anthony Wint. He's 2-0, former football player. He's a guy that I would not be shocked we see him on the Contender Series next year.
Ooh,
just depending on how fast they want to progress him. But he is, oh man, he is He's a big boy. He is a big boy. Just chiseled, and he had his second fight last year or earlier this year of the initial Double Down card. Man, that was one of those guys you walked away from. And you're like, oof, man, you can see the potential that he has there. And so look forward to being down there in Miami next week. Of course, as always, appreciate you tuning in for every episode of Fight HQ. And be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Be much appreciated. We'll talk to you on the next episode of Fight HQ.